There's a quiet crisis in our generation, especially among young men.
Without a calling, men, we just give up on life. And when we give up on life, it doesn't necessarily look like harm. It looks like just kind of checking out, going through the motions, just staying numb. Whether it just means like, okay, I'm just going to keep scrolling more, or I'm just going to settle for a type of friend that just lets me stay the same. I'm just going to just get through the day.
I see it in many of my best friends. We're being pulled between two extremes of masculinity, and no one's really showing us how to meet in the middle, how to be whole.
We got to have a bigger calling, something that's bigger than us to put our lives into. Because if we live for ourselves, it probably feels good for a while, and that adrenaline of it wears off, and we realize, like, oh man, this is empty. I'm not made to live for me. I'm made to put my life and give it to something of service bigger than me.
Today's guest is doing that work. Trey Tucker, better known as Rugged Counseling, is a licensed therapist who's blowing up online for telling the truth without the fluff.
This is not something that's trying to hurt me because it's coming from inside me. It's just trying to tell me something. It's like a check engine light in a car. The light is really annoying and we want it to go away, but the light ain't the problem. The light's just telling us that we got to check under the hood.
He helps men feel what they've spent their lives running from, and somehow he makes that process feel strong, not soft.
The guy that you can't sit with in silence for 10 minutes is the guy that you keep subjecting everybody else in your world to for hours on end.
This conversation goes deep. If you're a guy trying to figure out who the hell you are, or a human trying to understand someone you love, this one's for you.
Man, we need more people like you, Jack. Oh my goodness. I'm glad you have this podcast because we need your mindset to spread.
Trey Tucker, welcome to the Grateful Podcast.
Man, thank you. I don't know that I've heard a better intro than that. You need to do that for a living.
Just give intros. All right. I got my job lined up. Not going to school anymore.
I mean, yeah, there's no degree for that, so skip all that junk.
Yeah. Talking about degrees and stuff, you switched, right? This has not been what you've been doing forever.
Yeah, I started out in the business world. I was in marketing, even though like way back in high school, my counselor there was just, he was a hero for me and so many people. We literally called him like an angel on earth in a manly kind of way. But like he knew everybody, he paid attention, he could remember so many people's stories and details, and like you couldn't help but feel special around the guy when he was there. And that planted seeds in me of like that that guy made an impact on a lot of people on a deep level, not just like he didn't just give a speech and move on. He was able to touch a lot of people's hearts. And I thought, man, I want that kind of legacy. But for different reasons, I tried business first. I had some influences that said, you can always go back to things like psychology or teaching and coaching, but you need to make money first. And so I kind of brought that lie for a little bit, thankfully for not long. But I learned a ton. Like I learned how to relate to people in the corporate world. I learned that the corporate world is at least in my view of it, in my experience, any bad day, quote unquote, a bad day that I might have at my current work, it's still better than a good day in the corporate world. It's just there's you're working for what I would think of as superficial reasons, just
Yeah.
increasing either some company's bottom line or your own bottom line. And I'm just wired. I need a little bit more depth than that in terms of the impact that I'm making. Now, I'm not trying to discredit or run down anybody whose main goal is profit, because if you take that money and do something really impactful with it, then that's fantastic too. It's just it can become a slippery slope of like it's all about the money, and therefore the money is just never enough, no matter how much more you keep making. And so anyway, I switched out of that, but I came out of that with some really good experiences. One amazing mentor who helped me really find my true purpose and meaning in life. And then I started coaching and teaching, and the students, I started bringing me situations that I had no idea what to tell them. And so, long story short, I went back to grad school, and that then opened up the door into counseling not just students but adults and all kinds of life phases and situations. And now I'm amazed at the type of people and uh, situations I get to walk people through. So I have to pinch myself every morning to think like I get to do this. I actually get paid for it.
It's awesome. Yeah, that's the goal, right? Just being able to do something you love for a living. You're not working for something else. Your work in itself is something you enjoy and you want to do. That's, I think, what
Yeah.
we're all trying to build to.
Yeah, I have friends who they make 10 times more money than I do, and that's fantastic. I love it. And they are basically living for the weekend. They're just trying to survive Monday through Friday so that they can get to the weekend and then just get as much happiness as they can and then do it all over again Monday. And I'm like, I can't live like that where it's 5 days a week just trying to survive and grind and just live for 2 days of the week.
Yeah. Um, so how old were you when you made that switch? Because I mean, I see kids my age, I think your story is really refreshing because it shows that all that experience, even if you don't get it right on the first try, can lead you to what you want.
Yeah.
Because right now, like as an 18-year-old just graduate high school, I see kids my age, like I need to have it figured out. Whatever I'm doing 40 years from now, I need to know exactly what that is at 18, not
Yes.
fully developed. Um, yeah, so when did you start to realize, no, that is not the way that life works?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I get mad at adults who ask college students, high school students, even I hear some people asking middle schoolers, "Hey, what do you want to do?" I'm like, shut up. They don't know what they want to eat for dinner, and don't make them think they gotta have crap figured out for the next years. So anyway, I'm glad you brought it up because this I've found is one of the biggest stress causers of especially men, but also women too. But I see it more often in men of like I don't just have to have it all figured out by the time I'm like 20 or something, but also I need to be rich by the time I'm 23 because I see these people on TikTok or Gram or whatever, and I think most of them are lying about how much money they're making and a lot of this crap, and then so that causes all kinds of FOMO and anxiety and stress about well, why can't I keep up with that? I'm comparing, it's just a nightmare. So what I try to tell people is like, look, instead of instead of me asking you what do you want to do, I'm going to ask you what kind of impact do you want to make, because probably most people don't ask that, and you can make money through the impact you're making, but if the money is the main thing, you're always going to miss out on the actual satisfaction. So if you aim for something like impact, then the satisfaction comes with it. And then the money becomes easy because it's not even work for you. It's something that you were really born and wired to do. And yeah, you might change jobs 4 or 5 times before you really find like your groove. And that's great because you're going to bring a set of experiences that nobody else is going to be able to compete with. You're going to
Right.
have stories to tell, you're going to have wisdom that you had to make it through a crappy job or a terrible boss. Like you need those stories from your past to be able to help people in the moment for whatever you sort of really feel like you're hitting your stride. But we just got to know, like, and I'm personally, I follow Jesus, and so I believe there is a plan for things. And like, yeah, I can mess up certain aspects of the plan, but I think He's still going to use all those things for my good, His glory. So when I look back at some of those jobs that I had in the past, I'm like, yeah, I didn't want to stay in them, but I'm so glad that I was there because of the experiences that it led to and the people that I met. And then I can relate to so many more people because man, who else is going to be able to relate to somebody who's stuck in a job they don't want to be in, if not for somebody else that's been in that same type of situation? So
Right.
it's a long-winded answer to your question, but yeah, the bottom line is you just try to figure out what you're wired for and what kind of impact you want to make, and a lot of those little decisions they'll just start taking care of themselves.
Yeah. No, I love that so much because yeah, you're only really truly able to help people whose problems you've experienced. One of my favorite things, I actually have the book right here, in The Alchemist. It's my favorite book. I've read it so many times.
Yes.
Is when he's talking about how he doesn't want to learn through reading, he's learned through his experience. And I think back then, reading had a very different connotation than it does now. That was your pleasure escape, that was your doom scrolling, as
Yes.
opposed to now everyone's like, please read a book. But uh, yeah, you learned what you learned through your experience, through your failure. one of my favorite things Alex Ramosi talks about is like comparing himself to the hero's journey and how the conflict is what builds you. Without the
Yeah.
conflict, there's no story.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've been through five what I call hells on earth in my life, and been through other tough situations, but five of them really stood out as like, okay, this was horrific. Now, if I played the comparison game and like looked at other people's situations, yeah, they'd be less than that, less severe. But for me, they've been my five hells on earth, and I would never want to go back through them again. But I'm so glad that I did go through them, and some of them were my fault, but all of them taught me how to relate to people and empathize better. So, for example, my dad, he died in a car accident. And until he died, I always felt sorry for people who lost a parent and specifically lost a dad because that father son connection is so strong. But that's all I could do was feel sorry for them. I had no idea what it was like to actually go through that. And then when my dad died, I mean, it puts us in a what I call a fraternity of pain, where you bond together with other people that know that specific pain of losing a dad, especially losing a dad in a heartbeat like that, and something you would never want to go through. But I had men in their late 50s leaning on me for advice about how to get through the loss of their dad because they knew that I went through it in my younger years. And it's a bizarre situation, and it's also an honor to know that like pain is a great equalizer. It takes somebody who could be older than you or further along in their career or whatever, but they're going to lean on you because of what they know you've been through. So yeah, I'm all about some pain. I hope I haven't caused a ton of my own pain, but I want to go through it rather than around it because I've been through it enough times where I know I'm gonna get through it. I'm gonna be okay. It's just gonna be uncomfortable for a while, but that discomfort is what shaped me.
Yeah. Um, so that mindset, that's something that I think we want a lot of my generation to get to. Um, but you can't get to that understanding unless you go through pain. So something I've been thinking a lot about, writing a lot about, is how can we encourage my generation, my peers who are so rooted in comfort and scared of pain and failure? How can we encourage them to step out of their comfort zone and experience that pain so they realize that it's not as bad as they actually think it is? It's what will get them to the place that they want to be.
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I wish there was a one size fits all answer, but there's three approaches that I've found that tend to work for a lot of people. One of them is ask somebody to just tell you the situations that they've already been through that were hard. Like, hey, give me your top three or four situations. Like I mentioned how I've had my five hells on earth. Ask them for like what are your four or five situations where it's like it felt like hell on earth. And in telling that story, it forces somebody to go back into those moments and remind themselves, "Oh, wait, I not only can do this, I did do this already."
Yeah,
And and then they get reminded of the internal traits that they either built or discovered because of that hard stuff. And when you can relive stuff like that in the past and relive it in a way that you realize, like, okay, here it is in hindsight, and now I'm on the other side of it, that builds confidence because, like, I did that. And since I
yeah,
did that, I can do it again. And then you can also ask them, if you were giving advice to an 8-year-old that was scared to, like, I don't know, jump off the high dive or something like that, what approach would you take with that 8-year-old? And as they talk that through, they start realizing like, okay, well, the same advice I would give to this little kid is really basically the same advice I need for myself in this kind of situation. So if you a lot of times if you kind of externalize it like that, or hypothetically, what advice would you give? And then finally, I love movies. Love them
hmm
so much. Movie clips are one of my favorite ways to teach concepts because again, if the spotlight's on me, I can get a little defensive because somebody like trying to change me. I don't really like that. But if I can see my own type of situation on the screen and I realize like, okay, that guy just courageously went through it, or that guy backed off with like which one do I want to be? That's kind of a sneaky way of helping somebody figure out their own stuff.
Huh. Yeah, that empathy.
Yeah.
Um, that first one, I really like it thinking back to your hardest moments and building confidence through that, because it seems like the kryptonite for the victim mindset that's plaguing so many people right now. Um, it's been really interesting just to witness how many people think of themselves as a victim. I'm not uh, really too educated on psychology or different terms, so but I'm pretty sure that's a narcissism in its own way, right?
Yeah, and what I try to tell people is we all have narcissistic tendencies. We love to throw around that term at other people, like that dude's a narcissist, or my ex is a narcissist. I'm like, be careful because we've all got those traits, and just because somebody's traits showed up a lot at you doesn't make them clinically diagnosable as a narcissist. So
Right.
I hesitate to even use the term because it has been so hijacked, but you're right. Playing the victim is a classic narcissistic kind of thing to do, and we all have that tendency to do it because, frankly, we're wired to take the easy way out. And it's because our brain is wired to make us alive. Like it doesn't, our brain doesn't care if we're happy. Our brain doesn't care about anything else but keeping us alive. And if it can conserve resources, that gives it, at least in the brain's mind, its own way of thinking, it gives us a better chance of survival if we're just being efficient with everything we do. What it doesn't realize is when we take responsibility, when we purposely go through hard things, the brain actually gets stronger, and it doesn't really have that self-awareness to know it needs to get stronger, but we do. Our soul, our heart tells us that our brain needs to be stronger, so we can and have to take charge of our brain and our thoughts and then harness them in the way that we know in our own wisdom is what it ultimately needs. We need to appreciate the brain trying to help us out by giving us the efficient way out and showing us like, hey, if you just blame, this is the quick and efficient way to move on. Like we need to acknowledge like, hey, I see what you're trying to do for me, but I also know the bigger picture. So we're going to go this direction instead. And you can eventually train your brain to the point where it will follow you. It may not always go kindly and easily and without a fight, but just like a kid, if the kid starts to trust an adult, the kid will like, okay, if you say so, let's go. I'm like, I don't like it, but we're gonna do it. That's where we can get our brain to go. And so blaming is just one of those easy ways out. And it seems so pleasurable in the moment. And it does feel good because all of a sudden we just get this rush of release. Like the weight got lifted off of us because well, it ain't my fault, it's their fault. But then in the long term, we just become weak and soft.
I'm 18, I host the Grateful Podcast, and I've made a decision. I'm going to hit 100,000 downloads of my podcast before I leave for college on August 31st. I don't care how crazy it sounds, I'm all in. Every single day, I'll update you on my progress, wins, losses, strategy, doubt, everything. Let's see how far this goes. Follow along if you want to see me pull it off or burn out in the process.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yesterday, I talked to a biomedical engineer who works a lot on longevity stuff, and he talked about how cold plunges, they're not actually great for longevity because of anything physical. It's because you're pushing yourself to do something you don't want to do. And that in itself creates these, I forget the exact terms. Hopefully, I'll know it in a few years when I'm studying neuroscience.
Right.
But these things in your brain that really promote longevity. And we are just so addicted to pleasure. I've seen you say on different interviews that you think one of the main causes of anxiety right now is that our goals are pleasure and happiness. What should we be chasing instead?
Meaning and purpose. Those, it's like if we try to chase happiness, if that's our main goal, we're never going to hit it because happiness is always the result of something else. It's like if I wanted to get more muscle mass, well, that's great. Well, like, how am I going to get more muscle mass? I can't just sit here and like think my way into more muscle mass. I have to like do something to get it. So, if I want to be happy, fantastic. Like we should all strive for something like that. And so, therefore, what are the steps you're going to do to get to happy? And unfortunately, a lot of that comes with some bad advice about like blame everybody and cut the people off that are giving you a hard time and like all the easy ways out, but that's not real happiness. Like I try to help myself distinguish and other people distinguish that happiness, eh, really, if we're playing the word game here, it's kind of a bad goal because happiness is always going to be dependent on your circumstances. So if I'm having a good day, it's easier to be happy because the happy chemicals are flowing. But joy is something that's rooted deeper, and it doesn't matter what the circumstances are going on. Like even if I'm having a bad day, I still have joy down here because of other factors that I've built into my life, and that makes me stronger and ultimately happier because if I'm just shooting for happiness, I'm gonna be riding that roller coaster of like good day, bad day, somebody treated me well, somebody didn't treat me well. I don't have to worry about that so much anymore. Like I can still be joyful and I can still be thankful and still be generally happy, even on a bad day, because I know I've got the more of the deep rooted source going on internally. And I don't even know which question you asked, but that's the idea of, I think you were asking about the idea of like those parts of our brain that promote longevity when we purposely do hard things. And yeah, the chasing of happiness keeps us weak and short-term minded.
Yeah. Um, it's weird. I have this debate with my best friend. We've had this debate forever. It's never going to get solved. He thinks that sometimes you can just have moments that are, uh, they're just bad. They're plain bad. There's nothing around that. And I say, no, yeah, they can be bad, and I can recognize that. But in that, I can feel still joy or recognize it as for something better. And so we've had this debate for a long time. Um, but yeah, joy and happiness are such different things. And it's really hard because so many people do just chase that happiness. Um, and my thing is that always, like you said, it's always contingent upon something outside of you.
Yeah.
So by chasing happiness, you're kind of saying already, I'm not happy now, which ruins the whole point of what you're doing. Uh, I've been really focused on the word fulfillment recently. I think
Yeah.
fulfillment is kind of at the root of all those things of joy, purpose, clarity, mission, all of that. That's been my word.
Yes, fulfillment. I love it. But and when I talk about meaning and purpose, those are just interchangeable words to me as fulfillment. It's like if I'm really making a difference, if it, I look at it as you ever heard of the funeral exercise? I know it sounds really dark, but have you ever heard of this?
I'm not sure. Explain it.
It's pretty simple, but if you imagine yourself at your funeral, whenever that is, you can imagine it, whatever decade you want to put it in. But if you think about like, okay, well, at my funeral, what would I hope people say about me? That goes into, did I have an impact on people? Did I fulfill my purpose and therefore get fulfillment from that? Because if we really think about it, do we care if they talk about how much money we had or what kind of car we drove at our funeral or how much muscle we met? Like, no, we would hope, at least I think most people would say that they hope people talk about the way we treated them and the way we made them feel and the way we helped them out. And those are the things that bring the fulfillment that I think you're talking about. Maybe I'm wrong.
You're definitely right about that. Yeah. Um, I listened to an interview you had. I won't shout out the station because I'll probably I'm dissing them a little bit, but the reporter asked you, what are some ways that people can rid themselves of anxiety right now? And I
Mhm.
just don't think that's the right question. I think that's continuing this cycle of seeking instant solutions that's got us into the mess that we're in the first place.
Yeah.
It's we're just continuing it, right? We're saying, well, people are anxious because they're searching for instant solutions. So how can they instantly solve the thing that the seeking of the instant solutions caused? What questions should we be asking instead?
Man, we need more people like you, Jack. Oh my goodness. I'm glad you have this podcast because we need your mindset to spread. Um, yeah, you're right. Instant solutions are rarely going to make us better. And in fact, they're probably going to keep us stuck or make us worse. So yeah, when a TV reporter asks that kind of question, I also know that they basically are going to run a 30-second clip and they don't have time for me to explain this philosophical stuff that you and I get to dive into. So I always try to sneak in something about how you can bring anxiety down in the moment, but it's always caused by something else. So it's going to take a little more time to figure out what's really causing it. Because if all I do is just train people to try to flip the switch on their anxiety, they're going to be in a state of just yo-yoing all their life. So yeah, with it, I always have to empathize with the desire to get it out of the way quickly or to get through the discomfort quickly. Because whether it's
Right.
anxiety or anything, like I still have the tendency to want out of it really fast. Just give me
Yeah.
relief. Like I've got it probably worse than anybody. And I keep on having to remind myself that now this is good. I need to allow this process to prune away from me the things that need to get out of my life, to build in some of the things that I can need to make room for, to build in stronger traits. And anxiety is one of those struggles that most of us experience and very few of us really know how to deal with it. I didn't even deal with it well as a therapist in my early couple years. I treated anxiety as an enemy, and therefore I made it worse in myself. And I think in the first year of being a therapist, I don't think I helped anybody truly with their anxiety because I was treating it as the enemy. And you have to take an opposite approach to it. You have to look at it like, okay, this is a messenger. This is not something that's trying to hurt me because it's coming from inside me. It's just trying to tell me something. It's like a check engine light in a car. The light is really annoying and we want it to go away, but the light ain't the problem. The light's just telling us that we got to check under the hood. So, what I've tried to help people realize with anxiety is like it's uncomfortable because it's trying to get your attention to tell you to check under the hood because there's something else causing that anxiety.
So when we do check under the hood, and I love that analogy. That's so good. What are we looking for? What are we trying to find?
Yeah, usually anxiety is afraid of something that it thinks might happen in the future. And a lot of times, what it's afraid might happen in the future has a lot to do with what has happened in our past. So, if you look back at some of the struggles of the past, or like for me, rejection is a pretty not constant, but a pretty regular theme in my story, especially in my first, I don't know, 10, 15 years of life. And so I remember those moments of getting rejected in those younger days, and those things hurt. The stuff that happens to us, especially in our first 10 years, they stick with us like there's wet cement in our brain in those first 10 years. And stuff that seems little or minor when we're 0 to 10, it actually makes a big difference and can really direct a lot of our thoughts in the future. So if I'm getting anxious about somebody potentially like rejecting me or not really respecting me or making me feel like I'm not significant in the moment in this current day, if there's anxiety there, then the anxiety is trying to tell me like, hey, this is going to hurt because it hurt way back then. So don't let the hurt happen again because anxiety always thinks that you might die. So
Yeah.
like if you think about people's most common fear is public speaking. And so the anxiety rises up because logically, it's not thinking logically. It just thinks like if we get on that stage and we mess up, we might die because people's laughter might kill us. Like we know logically that's not the truth, but that little anxiety part in us is trying to keep us away from pain because it doesn't want us to experience the pain, but it really thinks the pain might kill us. So long
Yeah.
way of saying that anxiety is trying to look out for us and it uses our past experiences as like the filter of what to look for in the present.
I've heard that, I'm not sure if this is true, so I'd like to see if I'm right on this. The anxiety is kind of like a primitive thing. You think, like with the public speaking, it's like, I'm gonna say this, they're not gonna like me, they're gonna leave me outside, and the saber-toothed tiger is gonna come kill me when they all go to another and set up camp somewhere else. Like, is that what it's doing?
That's exactly what it's doing. So you mentioned primitive. So here's what's really going on. Anxiety was put in us on purpose because when in primitive societies, when we lived outside, we had to be alert all the time for wild animals or anything that could potentially hurt us when we were, say, living in the woods. And anxiety came in big time handy because you can hone your senses to hear little sounds or visually see patterns that you can see as like, okay, that's a possible threat. So when anxiety is working really well, it's telling us about possible threats. Like if you and I are walking through the woods and it's dark, we can't really rely on our vision so much, so we have to rely on sound. And if all of a sudden, about 30 yards away, we hear something rustling in the bushes, we can't see what it is, but our anxiety is going to try to tell us, like, wait a minute, that's a bear. It doesn't know that that's a bear, but it's going to tell us, like, hey, worst case scenario, get ready for this. And so it's super helpful in those moments. Now, when we live basically all of us under a roof with plenty of electricity, with screens and comfort, and like anxiety doesn't really have much of a job because there just aren't that many things that are likely to kill us like there would have been in those days. So now anxiety still wants to help. So it starts looking at things that we know aren't really threats, but it's thinking, well, maybe that's a threat. Like maybe that public speech is a threat, or maybe that girl that you want to go hit on is a threat. Like all these things that we know, like ultimately it's not that big of a deal. It's still trying to do its job and it's just trying to help. But we have to come at it with some curiosity and some empathy instead of like, shut up, you've stopped that, because then
Yeah,
it's just gonna get worse.
right. It's like I I'm less like knowledgeable about therapy and those types of things. I'm more knowledgeable about Buddhism and the way that I've read a lot of Buddhist books and the way that you deal with stuff. And anyone that's gone just a little bit into meditation knows that if you have a thought and you try to like squash it, it's just gonna come back and come back. It's like a bug that revives itself. It's like
Yes.
horrible, but um, so with anxiety, I here's a question. Like I'd say that we all have some anxiety in us, right?
Mhm. Oh
So
yeah.
at what point do you diagnose it? Because diagnoses I know are very high right now, especially among my generation. And I'm under the impression that they're not all necessary.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So first of all, I want to address what you talked about with meditation. I love when anybody meditates because our brain needs to rest. If people can just start with 60 seconds of silence a day, our brain is begging for rest. Like anytime we get bored, whether we're standing in line somewhere or waiting on somebody, we obviously we just I'm guilty of it too. We reach for our phones or some screen that's going to keep us from being bored. We need boredom. So yeah, silence is amazing, whether you call it meditation or just sitting there quietly, whatever you want to call it. So, but to answer your question about the anxiety part, yeah, eh, the way that I try to communicate this is, it, well, help me with your question again because I want to make sure I'm actually addressing what you asked.
So does at what point does anxiety become something that you should diagnose?
Yeah, the diagnosis part. I may get myself in trouble for this, but I purposely am very, very, very slow to put a diagnosis on somebody for a multitude of reasons. But one of them is if we put a diagnosis, it implicitly makes this diagnosis like an enemy sometimes.
Yeah.
And eh, there's certain cases where something like anxiety really gets in the way of somebody's functioning. Like they can't focus in class or they can't talk to people at work. Like they can't have enough just clear silence in their brain to get crap done that they have to get done. Like you can't just fail out of school or get fired from your job because the anxiety won't quit. You got to actually address it. So in those kind of situations, yeah, you probably have to put the diagnosis on it. In versions of anxiety that are less severe, I don't like slapping a diagnosis on it because, like you said, we all have anxiety in us. It's just how can we harness that? And when it's severe, it's a different approach you have to take as a therapist. When it's medium to mild, you take a more curious and empathetic approach to the anxiety because you can work with it. But
Yeah.
yeah, the diagnosis piece there, it's starting to change, thankfully, in the therapy world where people are a little more slow to diagnose and look through the lens of like, okay, these uncomfortable symptoms, they're not necessarily bad. They're uncomfortable, they're
Mhm.
unpleasant, but they're not necessarily something we just need to slap a pill on and move on.
Right. Yeah, because again, I don't have your job, so I'm not in a position to really make have strong opinions on the issue. But from what I've noticed among my peers, a lot of medication, it seems like a short-term solution to a long-term problem, where if you're medicating something and then that has side effects or whatever, and you need more medication or you become reliant upon the medication, that's less effective than if you were to just say, how about you meditate for 10 minutes a day and you reduce your screen time by 2 hours per day, and you hang out with other people instead of being uh, a asocial robot on your phone all day, like, and up till 1 a.m. I don't know. There are just a lot of different causes that I can imagine are really prevalent in this whole anxiety rise.
Yeah, and I don't refer any clients to a doctor who is pill happy, pill pushing.
Yeah,
Thankfully I've got really good connections with doctors who are hesitant to prescribe medication. They will if necessary, but first they're going to try the actual root cause solutions, all those things you just listed. And because if you just slap a pill on it, whether it's anxiety or depression or anything like that in the mental realm, it might give you some relief after a few weeks once it gets into your system, but eventually the med is going to stop being as effective as it was. It's going to wear off and you're still going to be left with the root issue and it's going to poke its way through. It's kind of like if you're trying to deal with weeds in a garden, if you're just cutting the weeds with your weed eater, it looks great for a while, but then the roots were still in there, so it's going to burst through the soil again. Same thing if you put medication on something without actually treating the roots of it. And
yeah,
any good prescriber, any good doctor is going to tell their patient, like, look, you have to do the pill and therapy because that combination has been shown through research to be effective as both. Because a pill in its most effective form, I tell people it's like a spare tire on a car. Like if your car is on the side of the road and your tire's flat, you got to get something to help you get to the shop. Well, the pill can help boost you up temporarily so that you can actually deal with the root cause of what's going on. Because sometimes our brains are so foggy that we can't even figure out what the root cause is. And sometimes that pill can give us enough space and clarity to find out.
right. And is that another reason that therapy is so effective? And it's another person that's trained that helps you look at the root causes?
Yeah, and I'll say this, therapy is only effective if there's a good rapport between the client and the therapist. I can have the best skills as a therapist of anybody else, but if I don't have a good just social connection with my client, like if we don't have a good vibe and generally like each other, nothing I do is going to work. So I'm always hesitant to say like everybody should do therapy because it's going to work for everybody. Well, it works for me and it works for most of my clients, but I'm not going to sit here and say like if it doesn't work for you, there's something wrong with you. It could be that it's the wrong match for you and the therapist. It could be maybe there's a point where I don't know, you just need to live a little bit more life so that you can have the self-awareness to kind of figure out like who do I want to be? What direction do I want to go? And then what hurdles might be in the way of accomplishing that. But therapy is I look at it like an oil change for my brain. So even if I'm
Yeah,
not going through something rough in the moment, I still go in once every month or two just to clear out the junk and then to put in some more healthy thoughts and strategies. Just because, I mean, life's rough. We can, no matter what background somebody comes from, I've never met anybody that disagrees with the statement that life is freaking rough and the world's broken. And so, like, what do we do about it? Like, so therapy can be that place where you go to just empty out the junk that the world keeps throwing at you.
I'm 18. I host the Grateful Podcast, and I've made a decision. I'm going to hit 100,000 downloads of my podcast before I leave for college on August 31st. I don't care how crazy it sounds, I'm all in. Every single day, I'll update you on my progress, wins, losses, strategy, doubt, everything. Let's see how far this goes. Follow along if you want to see me pull it off or burn out in the process.
yeah. One of my favorite things that I heard you say was, you've talked about one of the causes of anxiety is not enough movement,
Yeah.
where when we sit for too long, we have extra energy at the end of the day, and our bodies burn that energy by manifesting something to worry about. I'd never thought about that.
Yeah.
Um, is that like, do you prescribe movement, exercise?
Heck yeah. If somebody ain't moving at least a few times a week, at least trying to start building that habit, I can get a little bit of a coach and kind of get in their face and get try to motivate them because
Yeah.
I mean there's studies that show just exercising for 3 or 4 times a week for 30 minutes at a time, that can have the same benefits as somebody taking an anti-anxiety pill or an antidepressant pill. So why would we not do this? It's free. It's going to make you feel better. It's going to lead to all kind of other benefits. So yeah, it's when I have a meeting with somebody for the first time, that's one of my first questions is like, tell me about an exercise routine. Is there one? Do you even take a walk? That kind of thing. Because that's foundational. We were meant to move. Like back to this idea of the primitive society when we were living out in the woods, we were on the move all the time. We were just trying to
Yeah.
hunt our next meal. And then look at farmers. They wake up at the crack of dawn, they're working, they're working, they're working. I mean, they're worn out at the end of the day. They ain't got energy to worry about stuff that would normally cause anxiety in most of us. They're like, I need to go to sleep. So
Yeah.
there's something to be said for running ourselves ragged within reason.
Interesting. What do you think about the new movement? And I think it's awesome in a lot of ways. And then there's obviously the extremes, like anything, but of kids going to the gym all the time. Like the gym has become so much more prevalent, and I think largely in cause of social media.
Yeah, yeah, that's uh, it's one of those examples of a good thing that can be put in the wrong place in our priority list. Because if we make a good thing a main thing, it's going to ruin us. It can, uh, as much as I'm praising exercise, I also have to look at what is my motive for the exercise. Now, I'm never going to be purely motivated by just health only. Like, there's a part of me that I still want to look good, dang it.
Yeah.
Now, I have to keep it in check because if it starts to creep up into where, like, okay, looking good is kind of my main thing or one of my top two or three things, that then it's something I'm building my identity on, and then it becomes something that I'm using to kind of distract myself. Because if I'm building my identity on it, then I'm hoping it's going to fix something that I feel like is either broken in me or incomplete in me. And eventually, if I'm using it as a solution or as a distraction, that distraction is going to destroy me. So
Yeah.
we got to keep good things like the gym in their proper place in our list.
Right. I think it's another one of the main examples of where social media and comparison has really destroyed the self-esteem of young men, especially. Um, I mean, it's no disregard to the mental health of young women, but I think that I mean, there's studies of body dysmorphia among men and how insane it's gotten. And then you just have to look at action figures of Luke Skywalker. I mean, I have my dad's from the 80s, and you got like skinny Luke, and you see Han Solo, and then you look now, and they're all buff. And you're like,
Yes.
bro, they did not have biceps like that in the movies.
No, exactly, exactly. It's not realistic, and then we see that stuff and we beat ourselves up because we don't look like that. And even the guys like it, whether it's a movie character or somebody in real life who's an influencer, like that, the lighting they're using to look bigger and to look more defined is crazy, and the roids they're probably on and all the other synthetic substances, like we don't know what kind of hell they're putting their system through to look like that, and we wouldn't want that life anyway. And if you gave those guys truth serum, or if you were like me, who's a therapist who has been able to talk to guys like that, whether it be I get to work with actors who have kind of played that strong role or strong looking role, and I've talked to bodybuilders about they look the way we all want to look, but when you hear the truth from them, when they think nobody else is listening, they'll tell you like this didn't do what I thought it was gonna do.
Yeah, it's I have an interesting perspective on this because I'm very happy with how I look. I'd say I'm pretty jacked, and I honestly haven't worked as hard as most people try to for that. Like, I'm not one of those gym bros that's addicted to it. I'm a rock climber. That's my thing
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I've
Uh,
seen your videos doing that. That dude, your grip has got to be just phenomenal. I don't know how you
it's
do that.
it's pretty insane. I can like do a one arm pull up on a 20 millimeter edge, and it's pretty. It's a cool feeling, you know. It's a nice party trick. There was a senior banquet. We're on a boat, and they have these things, and I do a one arm on like the bottom or the roof of the boat. I thought it was pretty cool, but yeah, it's really interesting to watch people get so addicted to the gym. And then they have the idea that, oh, this is healthy. So
Mhm.
I can, that's okay to be my entire personality. That's fine. And I agree in the sense that it's better to be something like that than something else, but it is still an addiction. And so a question I had for you is just, is addiction in itself on the rise? Is that just a trait that we see, um, being more common depending on even like if it isn't the typical things you're addicted to?
Yeah, I don't know that there's stats that show that addiction overall is on the rise. I think you would have to niche down into like age groups or genders, but
Yeah.
what I definitely see is addictions being traded out. So some people are realizing that drinking is harmful for them, so they're trading more into like smoking weed. But now, just in the past few months, people are starting to realize the health detriments of smoking weed. And so I see a lot of people trading one addiction for another. I don't know that the addictions themselves are on the rise, but people keep trading them out, trying to find the one that they think is going to fix them. And so either way, whether addictions are on the rise or not, I'm not really concerned about that. I'm more concerned about how many people are actually turning inside and looking at some of the um, possible root causes for the even the need for reaching out for an addiction, even if it's a good thing, like we're talking about, like the gym or anything like that. But I I I I rarely talk about addiction in videos because addiction is just a symptom. Like
Yeah.
if you had a cold, the cough is just the symptom. We got to get to the root virus that's causing you to cough. So I'm more concerned about like what are the root causes that are making somebody have this urge for any sort of an addictive behavior.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, you just saying that made me think like maybe how hard I work on things like this, my business, my podcast, that could be an addiction. That could be a trade-off. It probably is. Um, and so that's something I'll definitely have to think about a little bit going
Yeah, like
forward.
we all have them. We're all like another way to look at it is like what am I what am I doing to avoid silence and
Mm.
just sitting with myself. Somebody said one time, it's like if you I may butcher the story, but the guy was basically, he said, like, I can't sit in silence for, like you said, 10 minutes. He's like, well, the guy that you can't sit with in silence for 10 minutes is the guy that you keep subjecting everybody else in your world to for hours on end. So
Okay,
we
that's
gotta
funny.
figure out like, okay, what's let me just sit with me and figure out what are the thoughts that are starting to bubble up because those are a lot of times the thoughts that get stuffed back down when we're doing our good stuff, whether it be running a business or working out or whatever it is. It's just what am I potentially running from in silence?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. I was fortunate enough after I graduated high school in June, me and my best friend, we took a month-long road trip out to Colorado, Utah, Arizona, Nevada, hiked, climbed, and I didn't have any social media for that time. I just spent so much time just to myself thinking, and it felt so good to be able to root myself back in me.
Yeah.
Um, it's crazy how much we miss that. I mean, even while people are pooping, they're just scrolling. You know what I mean? Like that's not what we're meant to be doing.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And we feel the benefit of it. Like if we give up our phone for a certain amount of time, we know, oh man, this feels so good. And then as soon as we get it back, it's just bam, that dopamine addiction takes us right back into like, I want more, I want more. And it
Yeah,
doesn't matter how old you are. This is not an age thing. This is our brains being under attack from screens.
I mean, I see grandparents, like even some of my grandparents that are in love with their phones, and it's really comedic to,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just the way it is.
Right. Yeah, I saw recently in a grocery store, I saw a mom and her daughter. The daughter looked like she was probably 14 or 15, and the mom was walking around the store staring at her phone and basically about to run into stuff. And the daughter said, "Mom, put your phone down and walk." So it's like it ain't an age thing. We're all subjected to it.
Right. Um, so one thing I did want to touch on a little bit more, I talked about it in the intro, is what a lot of people are calling the masculinity crisis. I mean, the name you've given a lot of your channels, rugged counseling. Where does this all fit? What is the masculinity crisis in your eyes? Oh, I want to hear some of your thoughts on it.
Yeah, and I always try to find some sort of a neat little sound bite to describe what's going on with men, and I haven't figured it out yet. But the word that I keep coming back to is calling, and calling is a similar way of saying purpose or mission, but without a calling, men we just give up on life. And when we give up on life, it doesn't necessarily look like harm. It looks like just kind of checking out, just going through the motions, just staying numb. And it could go, darker and from there. But whether it just means like, okay, I'm just going to keep scrolling more, or I'm just going to settle for, I don't know, a type of friend that just lets me stay the same. I'm just gonna just get through the day. That we gotta have a bigger calling, something that's bigger than us to put our lives into. Because if we live for ourselves, it probably feels good for a while, and then that whole thing, that adrenaline of it wears off, and we realize like, oh man, this is empty. I'm not made to live for me. I'm made to put my life and give it to something of service bigger than me.
Yeah, it's apathy.
Yeah.
There's so much apathy that we see.
Yeah.
It's a conflict I've seen, and I think everyone's kind of seeing right now is I don't want to get into politics, but it's very political in a way where you have the left's version of a man and the right's version of a man, and men confused on what is right and what is wrong, and they're two very extreme they're two very extreme definitions, and no one's really comfortable or showed us what the middle looks like.
Hmm.
What does a balance between uh, being you can be vulnerable, but you can also be strong.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't be strong unless you're vulnerable. Because if you never do something that scares you, then there's no need for courage. And being vulnerable is a scary thing, especially for us guys. So if we're going to sit here and act like we're strong, but we never open up, like, no, you're not strong. You're just trying to posture and put forth some image that we know we can see right through. So yeah, there is a middle ground. Like we need our emotions, but we can't let our emotions lead us. We need to
Right.
be the ones that lead our emotions and then use those emotions as some sort of energy force to help us accomplish the thing that we're called to do, or the things that we're called to do. A man is most fulfilled, to use your word, fulfillment. A man is most fulfilled when he is sacrificing for someone else's benefit. And that can look like loving your partner in a romantic relationship. That can look like helping a friend in a simple situation. It can look like pulling over on the side of the road and helping somebody fix their tire. And it can look like something bigger, like building some dream, I don't know, retreat center that helps other people get their life on track. Whatever it is, we are always most fulfilled when we're giving ourselves away in service to someone or something bigger.
So how do we find what we should be? Should's a strong word, but how do we find that thing that we're going to give our lives to that's bigger than us?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think this is one of those things where we can take some pressure off of ourselves, just like the pressure that the guys often feel like, oh, I'm behind because I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life, or I'm not rich yet. Like, just start getting curious. Like, the one of the things I ask people is, what kind of stuff in the world breaks your heart? not in some mushy, gooey way, but like when you see something like for me, it's human trafficking. When I hear stories of kids who are getting kidnapped and forced into this whole hellacious life, that enrages me. Some people see something like that and they feel bad, but it doesn't enrage them. They get more enraged by some other issue. Like figure out like look at the pain that people are going through and see which versions of that pain just tend to just bother you the most. Those are clues about what you might be wired to help with. Another way is it's almost always going to be connected to your own story. Because like you mentioned, you're most equipped to help the people that you used to be. So what have you
Right.
made it through? What have other people helped you make it through? A lot of times you then are going to be the one to pass that along to other people. So those are two areas I'd say to start with. And then start asking people that know you really well. Like, hey, what do you see are my biggest strengths, my biggest gifts? How do you see me potentially making an impact with those? And just see what they say.
Yeah. It's, I mean, say what you want about college and the admissions process and all that, and it's not for everybody, but writing all those essays,
Yes.
and definitely, I saw it with a lot of my friends, it makes you like, oh, wow, I'm good at this is who I identify with. This is the part of me that I want to show to the world. Okay, I think that's a really cool exercise I hadn't thought about before.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't have to be as complex as sometimes we make it. And again, take the pressure off of yourself. Like you're I believe we have multiple purposes. We have kind of one big purpose for life, and that's if you come from a faith worldview, and that is to spread God's presence and glory all over the earth. That's the overarching purpose. And then within that, there's smaller purposes. So like for me, I've realized like one of my purposes is to help people become the best versions of themselves that they can be. But I have other purposes too. So I'd say take the pressure off yourself, just get curious, and then also be open to the fact that like you're probably going to have multiple kind of smaller purposes along the way.
Yeah, it's interesting where you said, like, find what breaks your heart.
Hmm.
I I mean, I really agree with that, and I think that that's an amazing approach. But I've taken the opposite approach in what I've kind of been saying on this podcast. I started it with the hypothesis of the duality of gratitude and ambition, where like in order, it's kind of like an equation. If you want to find your ultimate fulfillment, the fulfillment that we're all seeking, you have to balance your ambition, your purpose, all that with what you're grateful for. And you can let what you're grateful for, your gratitude, it can fuel your ambition. And so you can look in your life and see, like, what am I most grateful for? If I were to lose this, that's an exercise I've had, or you come close to losing something, and then that helps point you in the direction of what am I most grateful for in life. You
Yeah.
can let that fuel your ambition instead of the idea I've seen where like gratitude is conflated with complacency. That's just not right. Um, so that, yeah, that's been my equation I've developed.
Ah, I love that. I might steal that because when you're coming from a place of gratitude, you want to give other people what you have as a way of celebrating what you've been given.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I call it the Grateful Podcast, even though I'm not like one of those guys that is so niche down on whatever their podcast name is, but that's become the ultimate guider in my life. And I've seen how it's worked, even if people don't recognize it. So many of the people that we try to emulate have followed similar principles.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I love that. I hadn't thought of that angle on that with purpose, but I'm definitely stealing it from you.
Go for it. In your life, how has that played out for you? What have you been most grateful for?
Oh, yeah, good question. I try every morning. I wake up and I write down three things that I'm grateful for, and they're typically things that happened the day before. And a lot of um, the things that I write down fall into different categories, but one of them is relationships. I'm so blessed to have amazing people in my life. And so I look around at other people, I'm like, man, I wish they had that level of relationship. So maybe I'm doing this, maybe I'm doing your thing without even realizing it, but I'm grateful for the depth of friendship and family and other relationships that I have, and I want other people to have that same thing.
Yeah, I've definitely thought that as well. Like I said before we started talking, when you were like, I bet you have an interesting story. And I just said, it's the relationships, it's the people that I've been around. I wish that everyone could have the amazing parents I've had or the amazing friendships I've had because having those people in your life, there's nothing more valuable than that.
Yeah. That's it. We're made for connection.
Exactly. And we're saturating our connection.
Yeah.
Well, Trey, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. But before we do end it, let my audience know where they can find you.
Rugged counseling on all the platforms. I do a podcast as well, and that's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. So yeah, it's Jack, you are amazing, bro. I'm glad we got connected, and then we need to do this again sometime because you're a light in a dark world.
Thank you, man. I would love to. And shout out to Jason Smith for connecting us. That guy is a legend.
Yes, he is.
All right. Thank you, Trey.
Thank you.
I'm 18. I host the Grateful Podcast, and I've made a decision. I'm going to hit 100,000 downloads of my podcast before I leave for college on August 31st. I don't care how crazy it sounds, I'm all in. Every single day, I'll update you on my progress, wins, losses, strategy, doubt, everything. Let's see how far this goes. Follow along if you want to see me pull it off or burn out in the process.